Hello and welcome to patch 14.13 of League of Legends. My name is Chris, and join with me is my patch review duo partner, Jason.
Hey, Chrissy, good to be here again, but what the hell did they do to Varus?
Yeah, it's definitely the most interesting change. I'd like to give a shout out to my two friends, Joey and Jade here, who are going to be in on this video. And I'm hoping they'll be in on the next one with us next time so we can have 4 people again. I think it's fun to kind of shake up the crew from time to time.
Thanks a lot, Chrissy.
Not to pull the rug out from under. I knew you were going to say that, yeah. Alright, let's get right into the meat and potatoes. We're not going to talk about 1LP. Let's go right to Blitzcrank. And right into Overdrive. This is actually a pretty significant buff for Blitzcrank. It's really reducing the downtime after he receives the slow effect after the speed up fades. A massive buff to the uptime of like Blitz's potential aggression in the laning phase.
Yeah, obviously it's still going to be gated by his Q cooldown, which is, I think, close to 20 seconds at level, at rank 1. But absolutely, like, once you have that rocket grabbed skilled by a few points, the overdrive allows you to present threat a lot more often. Also, less often, but still useful. It can be really good for getting away from a sticky situation, if you can use it, more often and have less downtime on it. Yeah.
Alright, next step we've got Brand. And we got less mana return by killing minions that are already affected by his passive. But keep in mind, historically, Brand did not have this for the last 10 years, so it's kind of just icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit less damage as you rank up the E as well. Yeah, what's to say about this? This really seems like a wave clear nerf. I still almost exclusively see Brand at support or occasionally in the jungle. What are they doing here?
Can't really call it a wave clear nerf because you're all but forced to kind of max his Pillar of Flame and not his Q or his E. So the impact of nerfing his E at the high end is kind of non-existent.
Yeah, that's fair. The rank 1 is the same. So yeah, I mean it'll make it a little bit harder to poke people from behind the wave, right? Because with the changes they made to the E a few years back, you can basically just light up the wave with Pillar of Fire, and if you haven't killed it, use E on the wave, and if the opponent is anywhere near it, they'll get hit by the spread of your E. So that's harder to do. These still seem like mostly lane nerfs to me.
Why would that make it harder?
Oh, no, you're right again. It wouldn't make it harder because you're going to be keeping E at rank 1 for most of the laning phase, you're right. Really just the fact that you don't have as much mana to do it, I guess.
Oh, okay. Because they didn't mess with, like, the range or anything.
No, you're right. Anyway, I don't know. So do you think this has a different aim besides wave clear?
Honestly, the part of him getting mana by killing things that are blaze is kind of a not incredibly easy to execute part of his kit. It's like the most underwhelming part of his kit. Even if you're playing him mid lane, it's not even super easy to take advantage of the mana restore. If you're playing him on support, it's not like Xerath. You know, you just go get mana with your thing.
I mean, it's pretty easy. They just need to be ablaze and you kill them.
Yeah, but the like health thresholds and how like the rankings work on his W, it's not like you can always know that your W is gonna just touch the casters just right, so your E can perfectly like tap all of the.
Well, even if you, yeah, but even if you like,
it
even
requires
if you,
a lot of auto attacking shenanigans.
Yeah, obviously he's not the easiest champ to wave to last hit with in the first several levels until he can like two-shot any wave. But I don't consider it hard. I don't consider any part of playing Brand to be hard besides just reminding yourself that you have to play like a little bit of a bitch. You can't just run into enemies. I mean, you can. You can line up with your R and, you know, you'll die, but you'll do a lot of damage. He's a pretty easy champ to play, and they've just made his the mana restore easier and easier over time.
True that. Alright, next up we've got Gangplank, and we got a increased slow detonating a powder barrel, but to compensate it no longer scales with its critical strike. So this is definitely probably a buff because now you don't need any itemization, only ranks in this to gain the same effect basically.
Yeah, does he have other critical strike synergies besides his parley?
Technically not even his parley has critical strike synergy.
Well, doesn't the bonus damage crit?
Mm,
No.
I mean, it doesn't crit for more than like his auto attack would crit.
Well, right, but like the bonus damage component I was saying would crit. Either way, like is this enough to maybe take critical strike out of his core build?
I mean, obviously you can't do that because the idea of critting the powder kegs is like the only way he has a claim to fame, you know?
True. Yeah, that's a lot of damage.
I mean, if he's not critting with the barrels, that just takes away his only legitimate build.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if he has a lot of AD, the barrels can do a lot of damage too.
The barrels ignore a huge percentage of a champion's armor. That's why they hit so
No, you're
hard.
right. You're right. So what's really the point of this? Is it just? I guess it's probably to just to smooth his power curve a little bit more slow earlier on, probably less slow late game.
Technically, it's less slow with 100% crit build, but you know, when you get to those high numbers, any slow is like devastating, so it's not really a huge deal.
Yeah, that's true. Because the minimum speed you can ever move is 110 units anyway. So that's a good point. This looks like a buff. And damn, you are so much more on today than you were last time.
About what?
When you were like, "Oh, looks like they at least gave this back," and we're like, "Nope, they nerfed it again."
Oh, I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, next up we've got a nerf to Gragas' passive. This one kind of hits close to home. This is kind of one of my top 10 favorite champs historically. And this was sitting at like 8% for like 14 years or something. And then like the last 2 seasons, the numbers on this have kind of been messed around. Now this is pretty depressing actually to go down to 5.5%.
I thought I remembered 4% at one point. Am I wrong?
And it was 6 or 8 or 8 for like 14
It was
years.
definitely 8 for a while. Yeah.
And then like 2 years ago they started messing with it.
And they have taken the cooldown down on it a lot. So it might still be better than it used to be at 8, just by virtue of the fact that you can proc it so much more often. 6 seconds at max level rather than 12. And then again, it was 8 at one point. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the cooldowns moved around a lot over time. But yeah, I don't know. Gragas, fat man, lots of health build is still pretty good. He can still spike you. I know that you like the tanky bruiser build more, but what do you see more often?
Honestly, I used to be the AP assassin Gragas in my youth, but I matured and became a fatso. I used to be that throw the
Your
ult.
reflexes became worse, and you took the crutch.
I was the old throw the ult into the Q and do the E and the Lich Bane and all that. I was one of those boys back in high school with Gragas, man. But I grew up and I learned into Heartsteel and Grasp and all the fun stuff. And Fatso Gragas is fun to initiate with and stuff.
I think you'll still be fine at 5.5 max health. I mean, you can proc this every few seconds.
Yep.
Very similar type of glass cannon or tanky bruiser type of champion next in Graves, and it looks like they're making the tanky build a little bit better here. Tell us about that.
Well, this is actually like my second or third favorite champion, funny enough.
Oh, yeah.
And whereas 6 or 7 years ago, this was too strong because this has also been nerfed into the ground over time. And for a long time, he used to actually gain the same amount of MR along with armor.
I really wish they would bring that back.
Yeah, but I'd start playing him bot lane again if he had both of those. Again.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of Laner Graves. He does some really interesting things. His play patterns are interesting, and to me, they're more interesting than when he just shows up and ganks you at a big distance.
Yeah, I never liked him as a jungler. That always felt silly. I have never jungled him once.
Yeah. I mean,
But
you might even see some mid lane Graves come back if they gave him enough MR.
that I don't know about because he has way too trouble like harassing people that are melee because of the way his projectile functions.
And that's kind of okay when most of the people in mid lane are inched.
I'm telling you, because his
Mhm.
pellets are blocked by minions, he'll struggle against like all the Yones, the Yasuos, the Zeds, the Talons, and all that stuff.
You wouldn't play Malcolm into to Silas or Zed.
Another
You
thing
play him
is,
in. Yeah.
he just doesn't have the range also to do. He's not, he's not Lucian.
Play him into Ari.
No.
You'd play him into
No.
You'd play him into Vagar.
No, man. You don't want to play him mid.
All right.
The best person you
Anyway,
could probably play him mid again is probably
Mhm.
against another 80 carry, and that's just because he gets so much armor.
Anyway, yeah. So this is 2 extra bonus armor per stack at any rank, stacking up to 8 times. Which, if you're not maxing Quick Draw early on, is going to add up to a lot more armor in the first half of the game.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's a lot.
Oh, no, it's definitely a lot. I mean, think of the advantage of just sitting on, like, a cloth armor. You know,
Mhm.
that basically negates half the lethality items in the game or something. And he basically has 2 cloth armors if it's maxed out at level 1. And you have to max this second, so obviously this ability doesn't really shine until, like, the later portions of the game.
Sure, but maxing it out takes 32 seconds of combat time. When are you ever going to do that?
No, that's kind of a misconception.
Oh, really?
I mean, if you do it naturally, yes, it takes that long, but there's
Right,
a built-in...
and then you get the extra attack for dashing.
Yeah, you get more stacks for dashing towards people, which you're constantly doing to get an extra shell of his auto attack. So
That's one of my favorite mechanics in the game. Forcing him to kind of like move towards enemies to get the defense bonuses.
yes, plus his dash is also his attack speed reset.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I still don't think this is a huge buff overall. You disagree? You think this is big?
If he was in the laning phase, I'd say it's really big, but he also basically takes no damage from jungle monsters because of his knockback on his gun, so it's kind of inconsequential in the jungle, even if it's a net positive.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously it's good. Bring back the MR, even if it's only half the armor.
Yeah, even if it's just half of what he gets, right? Like, just make him more generally usable against champions where he can actually get in and be a threat. I love
If I'm
that.
not mistaken, at one point, I think he actually gained at most 180 armor and MR with this at one point in the game.
Woo. Yeah,
A
I
long
remember
time
it was a lot more back in the day. So if he's getting 128 now at max rank, I could see it.
And then there was a period where people were building Sterix and Hex Drinker on him all the time, and this was back when Lifeline effects stacked, and he got nerfed into the ground when they made those stop stacking, and then they also nerfed his ass a lot because he was popular back then.
Okay, Grandpa, you have like pictures of this and like those little like plastic things that you look into that look like kaleidoscopes.
Well, if you remember correctly, when I was abusing the shit out of this champion is the game we met in.
Oh, was it? I didn't remember that. I remember that you did that with the max lifesteal all the time.
Yes.
I didn't know that was the game that we met in. That's
I was
cool.
abusing the fuck out of the old Warlord's Bloodlust keystone, which gave you more lifesteal the lower you were back in the
Who was
day.
that playing?
And the double Vamp Scepters. I think you were playing Soraka a bunch of times, which is
Oh,
probably super.
that was a good combo with Graves back in the day. Yeah.
But the build I was running at the time was so obnoxious you could just run anything and it was impossible to deal with. I only got to do that for like 6 months, but it was fun.
And they remade the runes.
Yeah, of course. Remake them every 6 months. So
All right, next.
Next up, we've got Callista, which is kind of the opposite of Graves in the sense that I would never play this champion. We got less AD, and then we got a longer cooldown on her ultimate, which is one of the few ultimates in the game that does no damage.
Yeah, I mean, there's several of them.
No damage and CC, though. Well, this is obviously just a straight nerf. I don't know why. Probably some Korean guy is playing this character like 1% more of the time.
Yeah, I rarely see this champion, and when I do, they often get stumped. It's got to be a professional focus change.
Nerfing
Either
the
very high elo plus or professional focused, because this is not the type of champ that excels, even in general skilled play. And yeah, haven't seen her too much. Mind-boggling that she needs to keeps getting nerfed.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she's on a list somewhere in the Riot Vault of being reworked within like the next couple of years.
When she ults you and you're supposed to like get in and engage a fight, like it is so hard to actually use that properly too. The mechanics on it feels so bad.
It feels awkward, that's for sure.
Very. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a champ I'd like to see reworked, and I'd have to guess coming in the next 3 years.
Okie dokie, next up, we've got an equally head-scratching nerf to Karthus here, who is basically now a de facto jungler as he's been completely pushed out of the mid lane, sadly.
Yeah, this might not be as head-scratching if you consider how much he was benefited by some of the new mage items in the update recently. And it may just be kind of lingering power from that.
Well, I know what his numbers have been historically, and if you nerf his Q, he's just a goner. That's all he's got.
Historically that was true, right? But with how powerful items have been in the last few years, all he needs to do is just, the Q is on a 1 second cooldown. All he needs to do is hit someone with that, and they'll just keep taking damage from all kinds of items. So, I'm not going to say this isn't a significant nerf, even though it's just 3 points. I guess by the time you hit rank 5, right, 116 versus 119, really not that bad. At level 1, it's a nerf. That's obviously going to make his early jungle clear harder.
Yeah.
But he's not a champ you really play for the jungle clear anyway. He's a champ you play to scale up safely and get tons of late game damage.
Alright, let's see. We've got less health with Kennen, and then we got more health for Lee Sin.
Yeah, pretty much. And a bigger shield for Lee Sin, particularly in the early levels. That, I think, is maybe the bigger part of it. This guy is so good at skirmishing early.
Definitely is a big deal, because most Lee Sins are going to max Safeguard last.
Right. Usually QW. Yeah. And the ratios on the Q and E are pretty insane.
True dat.
Yeah. So, as great as Lee Sin already was for skirmishing early, and, as mediocre as he is in the late game, they just made him even better at those early skirmishes and duels in the jungle as well. It sucks getting a bad Lee Sin on your team who just misses the Q, walks around a little bit, and then takes poke and walks away. But, man, a clean Lee Sin that can not only hit the Qs, but really assess the engages well and get out of the fight at the last second before they're killed. Damn, they really can be game changers. And all it took was increasing their AD ratios on the Q to 290%.
What I'd like to see is a big fat health ratio on his W to reward the Lee Sins that want to go more into like a bruisery path,
Oh, that ship is sailed. Don't get me wrong, that's kind of where I wanted him to go too, but that ship is absolutely sailed. Back back in season 6, 7, 8ish, like Lee Sin was a basically like a sight stone for your team.
Yeah, I know. I used to
You
get
know,
the
very
runic.
impactful early, but then like all he was doing for the late game was getting tanky.
I remember the runic
Yeah,
bulwark days.
completely gone. You will never see that again for Lee Sin. Kiss it goodbye.
I don't think just because it's unpopular doesn't mean it couldn't be good again.
It is as dead as MySpace.
I do think the glass cannon is like his only way to kind of scale into the late game kind of thing.
The only correct way to itemize right now. I mean, it has been for years.
I don't think it would. I think it'd be cool.
It would be cool. I'm just telling you, it's not going to happen. Like Riot has made it very clear that they're never going to lean that way again.
Alright, next up, we've got a pretty juicy buff for Lyssandra's Q. This ability's on a pretty short cooldown and is dirt cheap. So this is a pretty fantastic buff.
Yeah. And then better cooldown on W is no slouch either.
Yes.
This is, I mean, Lyssandra's the type of champion that gets buffs 3 or 4 times every single year. And in fact, I was thinking it's probably been a long time since she's had any nerfs. I looked it up. You want to take a guess what the last nerf is?
Well,
I'm not going to... Well, I don't even want to hint at it. Take a guess what the last time Lysandra was last nerfed is.
well, the last time I seriously played rank, Lysandra was one of my go-to blind picks, and I remember one of the reasons she was one of my go-to blind picks is because at max rank her Q used to only have a 2.5 or 3 second cooldown at rank 5, and then at one point it was nerfed to 4, and I kind of lost interest in playing her because at that point she had a really obnoxious fucking wave clear.
And not only did they take it down again, right? But now it's easier to build a lot of ability haste as well.
No, it's still 4, but it's probably okay now.
Oh yeah, it is 4th next rank. And I guess in fairness, right, 45 ability haste is equivalent to like nearly 100. 45 cooldown reduction is equivalent to nearly 100 ability haste. So it's not like it's really necessarily easier to pump it up real high.
She's probably as good now as she was when I liked playing her a lot.
She might be. I barely ever see her. So again, you want to take a guess what the last time she was nerfed was?
Well, what I just pointed out is definitely the last important nerf. Now
So
it
when was
probably
that?
doesn't matter.
You said when I really liked her. What year?
I guess I was playing her a lot like 3 seasons ago, I guess.
So the last time she was actually nerfed was 2019. In any patch, I will not include the durability update because they just across the board like hit every champ with healing.
I don't think it was that long ago.
It was. I looked it up in her changes a few hours ago. Season 9.7. That was the patch.
What nerf was it?
I believe they increased the cooldown on Ring of Frost.
Oh. Okay.
And yeah, every single change since then has been a buff. And I wondered, like, why was Lysandra in such a poor place that they had to just keep buffing her over and over and over, and she still doesn't get a lot of play?
No, I definitely think she needed the buffs.
Yeah, she did feel weak.
She never had in the old days when I used to play her, I guess back in 2019, she'd never have enough damage to like get the closer. You'd have to, if you weren't running Ignite, you would never have enough damage to get like finish the kill, you know?
Yeah, she's a control mage who scales well into the late game, but I feel like for how weak she is early, you know, she doesn't become a Kassadin, she doesn't become an Orianna, she doesn't become a Diana in the late game, where she's just going to 1v4 an entire team and spike them down quickly, and then get away or survive the entire team hitting them. She just can't do any of those things quite well enough, right? She doesn't become the Aurelian Soul, for sure. She doesn't
No,
do
I think
quite enough
most
to
people.
justify her early weak laning. Go on.
I think most people's expectation is for her to just alt one squishy person and try to blow them up. And when I played her, she wasn't good enough to do that consistently. Now I think there's a lot more room in her cooldowns and ratios to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like a good EEWR combo can lock a few people in place and lock them down for damage for your team, but then you need that damage source to be fed and to be near you. And yeah, Lissandra herself, unless it's a very squishy target and she gets the perfect combo, or is just pretty fed, is gonna have a hard time actually 100 to zeroing them herself. So yeah, that's a good point too, right? Just her role makes it a little bit harder to really capitalize on these huge AP ratios that she has on, for example, her Q. And yeah, and just as far as being a weak laner who scales well, she doesn't scale quite well enough to match some of those other like late game Uber threats.
Well, I'd say right now she's in a pretty good spot. Her W has been buffed a million times.
Oh yeah, the numbers certainly look really good on her. It's surprising that she's not more popular than she is. Before we move on to MF, just wanted to mention, Lulu, this bug fix is definitely a buff in disguise, and nice to see.
All
We're gonna
right.
get more of those later. Yeah.
Next up, we've got Miss Fortune. We've got more base attack damage, which is actually a gigantic buff for Miss Fortune because she has the lowest base AD amongst AD carries to compensate for her passive. So that's actually a tremendous, tremendous buff to Miss Fortune. And she also has like the lowest AD at 18 in the game too amongst AD carriers.
That's a good point. And 3 AD may not sound like very much, but if you fully hit the abilities, for example, like hitting your target on the bounce of the Q, and of course, like hitting them with a full set of waves of bullet time, her ultimate, you end up with insane AD ratios on those abilities. So even 3 AD is going to mean a lot to those. It's going to mean dozens of extra damage, on like a full wave of her ult.
And then next up, we've got some pretty big buffs to her strut. It's always been kind of a goof build to not run boots on Miss Fortune. But honestly, if you got changes like this, it might actually be kind of legit to just not build boots on her anymore. Personally, I would always build the boots, but this is pretty good. We got just the instant effect is giving more movement speed, and then the ramp up effect is also giving more movement speed, and it's just they just made this better in like every way possible.
Yeah, you're trolling if you don't build boots on MF. Now, if you want to like sell the boots once you have 5 full items to try and get your 6th, that's more reasonable. But I generally wouldn't even do that because you need the in-combat movement speed too. That's important.
I'd make fun of people less after these changes for not buying boots.
I think if you just don't buy the boots, you're trolling. Yeah, Strut kind of an overlooked part of her kit, and probably the part that requires like the most skilled play to use well.
You'd think so.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, MF's like a really good crutch character for, maybe like decent players who might not be a good ADC, but end up having to find themselves on the roll.
No, Miss Fortune is the definitive low effort AD carry. It's like Miss Fortune, then about a mile down the road, then Ezreal, and then some of the other ability ones, and then all the other rest of the AD carries.
I mean, I might agree with that, right? But I think you see a lot more lousy players just using Ezreal as the safe crutch and not being able to do much with him. I guess you see a lot of that with MF too.
Well, that's what people do with They play Miss Fortune like they're playing Xerath or something. They don't auto attack. They just want to Q, E, and R. People that play Miss Fortune never have like any mechanics or fundamentals. Yeah.
I don't know. I would agree with you on mechanics, not necessarily fundamentals, right? Like, MF is a champion that if you have good fundamentals and poor mechanics, you can still really shine on. because she does, she's not a particularly safe carry. She requires positioning. She requires you to kind of like figure out where your enemies are going to be. She requires you to sync up with your the CC on your team, much more so than like an Ezreal or even like a Xayah does.
She used to be one of my favorite AD carries to play.
She's a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie, she's a lot of fun. And definitely my go-to when the very rare times I have to play ADC. Occasionally I play Tristana as well.
Well, you just like proven my point with that statement. I never play AD carry, but when I do, I play Miss Fortune.
I'm proving my point too, right? I've got the fundamentals, I don't have the mechanics.
Alright, let's see. Let's go down to Orianna. And this is also kind of a Miss Fortune-like change here, where Orianna has like the lowest base AD in the game, if not
After MF.
definitely the game,
Oh no,
because
more than MF. Yeah.
to compensate for the fact that she has a built-in Nashor's Tooth basically on her passive. So in the laning phase, and this is pretty much the only time this comes into effect, like trading with auto attacks with Orianna is actually a huge part of her laning phase because of the ramping on-hit magic damage on her passive. So this is definitely a monstrous buff to her early game, because she's all about the annoying auto attack trading in the early laning phase, and last hitting, of course, it's going to feel a lot nicer.
Right, all those things definitely true. Just to reset for anyone who doesn't know, Clockwork Windup or passive will deal more damage with subsequent auto attacks. The more autos she launches in a row, more damage it's going to deal.
No, it's just twice. It's just twice.
Oh, it stops scaling after 2 autos?
Yeah.
Okay, but you'll keep doing the full damage beyond the 3rd hit as well.
Yeah. It's completely useless outside of the laning phase, but it's a huge part of the laning phase.
Yeah, and she has pretty decent range on her autos too, so it's good for the laning phase. Alright, Pantheon, this to me is just a nothing burger, right?
Let me see. Minimum non-champion damage. Well, they moved this to a flat amount of magic damage to just a percent of the target's max health a couple patches ago.
Right, and they set a minimum for non-champions for the jungle, I guess, is the intent of that, but this is single target, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so 10 extra damage to a single jungle monster for using his stun. This is completely insignificant.
Well, these days you basically have infinite mana in the jungle, so, you know, it's just more clear speed, right?
Very, I mean, 10 more damage, for a medium cooldown ability that affects one target. Is it more clear speed?
Little numbers like that are a big deal in the early game.
Okay. I still think it's a drop in the bucket, though. Anything else you want to say about Panth?
No, not really. Although I
do really like the change they gave him recently, where they improved his damage based on his tankiness.
Yes, I'm always gushing about health scalings.
That was cool.
Alright, next up we've got some changes to Skarner, where the initial portion of his Q is losing some of the damage, and then the end portion of the Q, or the reactivated portion of his Q where he throws the boulder, is also losing the same amount of damage. And yeah, this is a pretty juicy nerf, man.
I think this is the end either way, because I think it's either you get the 3rd hit with Shattered Earth, or you end it early with Upheaval.
That's what I said.
Well, you said the initial part and the end. But anyway, yeah, I guess I shouldn't bury the lead. Like, I agree with you. This is like, they just dropped the Chrysler building on this guy.
I know, and this is like such a spammy ability of his. It's almost like, why don't they just piss on your open wounds by making it cost a lot more mana? Which is something he really can't afford on an ability with such a low cooldown.
5% of their maximum health on a bread and butter combo ability. This is he's going to lose so many duels and skirmishes he would have won.
I'll never take him top again. which was amusing for a while because his passive is really cheesy.
Did he do it a lot? Like, did it work for you?
I think it was good.
But did you do it a lot, and did it work for you?
I'm a pretty conservative player. Yeah, I think it was good.
All right.
I don't think you have to, like, blow someone's dome off for something to be, like, net neutral or decent top lane as long as it's a tank.
Increased mana definitely hurts in as a laner as well.
Yeah, that's downright silly.
Yeah.
I remember when we were making fun of Renata, and at one point in the video, I, like, absolutely lost it when I explained that her E, the stupid rocket tiny-ass shield thing, was, like, 130 mana or something.
Oh yeah, that starts kind of cheap and then it scales up ridiculously at max rank and its cost, right?
It's like so bad, and the shield is so low, and the damage is so pathetic. It has like such a ridiculous mana cost. And when it was like one of the final things we were ragging on her before we started talking about the reworks.
I was a little bit worried we were going to get through this whole patch without ragging on Glask.
Well, the champion deserves all the ridicule you can muster.
Absolutely, the champion itself is a joke. And she looks like one, too.
I know, that's the word. That's what makes... I can almost forgive it if she looked as cool as, like, the reworked Mordekaiser, even if I was a huge fan of, like, the original Kaiser. If she looked cool, I'd be like, it just doesn't hurt as bad, but she looks like such a retard. It's, like, hard to even, like, take seriously. Well, okay, we're not going to do another Renata
surely somebody... Oh, okay.
Next up, we've got Talia, and we've got we got less damage to monsters on each part of the queue, and no more AP scaling.
I feel like we're still kind of underselling the Skarner nerf, but yeah, Talia's, so this is obviously for the jungle, but what's worth noting is that the Threaded Valley's bonus damage, which is being significantly nerfed here. You'll still do all the regular damage to the jungle creeps, and that's, a fairly significant amount, but the bonus damage against monsters does not fall off with each stone that you throw at them. So normally the stones will only do like 40% of the damage of the first stone that you hit with. But against jungle monsters, it'll do a lot more than that, because all this bonus damage is being applied at full effectiveness. They're taking a lot of that down. And I think in doing this, they're really making her a considerably worse jungler. I think she'll still be viable in the jungle, but probably kind of more like on the edge, where she needs to be played with by somebody who's very good and in the right situation. I think this is enough to honestly knock her out of being a standard jungler. And then where's she gonna go? Occasionally I see her like work okay as an APC bot lane. I rarely see her mid.
Yeah, it's tough, man. She has kind of a slightly goofy kit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think she's bad, though.
She's not. Especially with, how well her Q scales into late game. But with how hard the R is to use effectively, and that's her ultimate ability, and kind of... even just the amount that she kind of relies on the right other champs to be in the game with her W and E. You gotta pick her in the right place. Generally when I see Talia in my games, particularly as a jungler, she actually does quite well. She usually pulls out a good KDA and does like a good portion of the team's damage, but for whatever reason, the rest of her team always seems to struggle.
Yeah, I don't really think she's suited for jungling, honestly, but I don't really think she's an overachiever mid or support either.
Yeah,
honestly, if I had to put her somewhere, I'd probably put her on support, just because the
everyone on support, dude. Every mage in the game, you're like, oh, they'll work better as a support. Half the fighters in the game, they could probably be a support.
Well, no, it's just says the consequences of getting hit by Seismic Shove are so devastating that I think it's more consistent value than the chances of her being super useful coming from the mid lane or the jungle.
Here's the reason I'd rather have her, again, with the right team composition, assuming you have AD like in your jungle and maybe even at mid lane. Here's the reason I like her better as a bot lane marksman, or not as a marksman, as a bot lane AP mage carry, than as a support. because generally, like her W and the E, not only are they going to do more damage if she's the one who's feeding or getting all the gold getting fed. But in addition to that, they're the easiest to set up when you have somebody else on your team bringing reliable CC. And if that person's right there next to you, whether it's like a Taric, whether it's a Nautilus, whether it's a Seraphine, whether it's a Nami even, you can set up your entire combo really well and straight up burst someone out in the bot lane. I think that's harder to do when Taliyah is the support, not because you can't get the damage out, but because the initial CC will be harder to set up.
Well, that's interesting, alright.
Yeah. Not what you would normally think of immediately, but that's kind of where I've seen her have more success, and when I think about it, I think that's why.
Okay, let's move on to by far the most interesting change this patch. Varus is getting a new passive. I say new, but it's more or less kind of the same functionality that his old passive had. He just gets just a bit more interesting.
That's what you think of it, yeah.
In order to get a new passive, of course, he lost the same thing again. So less damage, less attack speed.
The new boss.
Go figure, because you gotta have a yin for every yang.
Aim at the old boss.
On the flip side, though, his W passive actually gained on hit magic damage in a strange reverse, almost to exactly triple counterintuitive the buff on the W and the nerf on his base stats, in perfect Riot contradiction.
It was the old Yu-Gi-Oh! Triple reverse trap card.
Exactly. So basically what he's getting here is kind of a soft version of Conqueror, where if he last hits something, he gets... Now, this is kind of worded kind of strange. He gets
Very
bonus
weird.
attack speed, but apparently he also gains AD and AP as a percentage of his attack speed. Now, it's not like you run around in the game with 500% attack speed, so it feels like kind of the most you'd really ever get out of this in terms of AD or AP is always going to be kind of less than 20, 30, like 80 or AP or something.
Yeah,
because
so the wording is very weird. If you look at it as an absolute number, right? Your attack speed is going from 0.6 to maybe 1.4, 1.5. That's a difference of 1, so 10% of that is obviously not what they're looking for. They're probably looking for, if you have 100% bonus attack speed, you would get 10%, or so you would get 10 AD and 10 AP. And granted, both of those are going to be useful as ratios for both on most of his abilities. But that's still just 10 AD and 10 AP. That's not very good.
But dude, if he gets a champion takedown, it's 15 AD and 15 AP.
Ooh.
Did you consider that?
I did not consider that. And that's 15% of an amount that's increased by 10% for the champion takedown.
So, the only good thing I kind of see about this is it reminds me of Conqueror, and it'll probably make people lean into taking Conqueror on Varus, especially since they've stripped away the beautiful, magnificent lethal tempo from the game. This is really going to probably make him kind of lean into that. And the reason I say that is because there was about a year or two when the way Conqueror worked is you could actually prime it against the minions, and then as soon as you did damage to a champion, it would immediately activate, and you wouldn't need to get all the stacks off on a champion once upon a time. So just like this, you could trigger the, I call them bonus stats, but it's going to be like the most pathetic pittance of stats possible just by last hitting minions before you actually take a fight for all the good it's worth.
Yeah, and it's that's fine, but but before this change, right? You could get 40% late game bonus attack speed just by taking down a minion or a monster and then attacking an enemy.
Well,
and now you're getting what?
He still gets bonus attack speed.
Now he gets 10% bonus attack speed instead of 40
Yeah.
for attacking an enemy. and he can get like maybe like 5 to 10 bonus AD and AP as well. That's not much. Now, granted, the 40% bonus attack speed and a little bit more AD and AP if you get a champion takedown is nice. But I don't know, man. Like most of the time, I'd rather, especially on a champ like this, have the 40% attack speed. It's nice that they're uncapping his total attack speed when you get a champion takedown.
Not by much.
Or I think even when you get a minion takedown. But overall, doesn't this just feel a lot weaker than when he had a patch ago?
Well, if he got a champion takedown a patch ago, he'd get basically a very similar amount of attack speed than what he's going to get if he still gets a champion takedown. Now, what he's not getting is as much attack speed by just farming, you know?
Right. So, like, what is he getting in return? An extra, like, 7 AD and AP in the mid-game?
Well, you can't put a price on getting offensive stats where none existed before, you know?
You could literally put a price on that, actually, but...
you know what I mean. You're getting more offensive...
It's more valuable than it looks.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think most of the time I'd rather have the attack speed. Now, as far as what this is going to do for his build... Since you're getting less of the attack speed naturally, and you're getting more offensive stats to use with every single attack that you make, I feel like you're almost trolling if you don't use the on-hit build now. I know that Varus has a lot of different builds. He's got the AP build, he's got the lethality build, he's got the on-hit build. I feel like the on-hit build got the biggest benefit from this set of changes, or at least the smallest nerf. What do you think?
I think the amusing thing is he going to have to play for like 20 minutes just to make up for the 3 less AD that he doesn't have, basically? Just to make it up in his passive, you know? It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, the passive, yeah, it gives you the AD. It just feels like they're nerfing him overall.
I tell you that if they wanted to make this a little better, they should have just had it give him, like, on top of what it's giving him, also give him, like, 5, 10, 15 throughout the game.
Yeah. Finally, with this W, the missing health damage, when they have the stacks of Blight on them, now scales with your rank in that ability rather than your level. Most people were maxing this ability second on Varus, so in most cases, it kind of works out neutrally. It's worse in the early game. It's better in the late game, and then in the end game, it's kind of neutral. But the changes overall might encourage more people to start maxing, or at least putting a few points into W earlier on, rather than fully maxing the Q.
I was such a huge fan of AP Varus for such a long time. But a while back, he got a huge nerf to his W, which made it kind of unpalatable.
Yeah,
now it just kind of does enough chunk damage to where it's still good, though.
Yeah, what do you think this does for AP Varus? Probably a little bit of a nerf as well, right? Just based on the fact that you can't trigger the, the AP on hit as often because you're not getting as much attack speed.
Well, AP Varus kind of still needed lethal tempo, so that's kind of a big bummer, too.
That's gone, too. Good point.
Because if you had a shitload of AP, it made his W do a ton of on-hit magic damage, which really made lethal tempo a lot valuable, even if you were going, like, a total magic pen build.
Yeah, so basically...
now I'd say AP's kind of out now.
Overall, right? Worse stats, less attack speed from your passive, a little bit more offensive stats from your passive, and a better W. Overall, this feels like a nerf to me, and I kind of see why they were doing it, to try and make the scaling, particularly for takedowns, more interesting, more interactive.
I don't think it's a nerf.
Okay, so you think this is neutral, or you think this is actually a buff overall?
I think it's a buff, just a pathetic buff.
Okay, I'm reading this as a nerf in total. And I'm going to predict that we're going to see him get buffs in the coming 6 patches.
I
Not
think
necessarily all 6 of them, but more buffs than nerfs in the next 6.
I think in the late game this will increase his DPS by like a small amount. That's about it though.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Vladimir. This is a bug fix, but this is a huge buff to him. The heal is going to do a lot more than it did last patch.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that in length though last time.
Yeah, last time
it was untouched for so long.
Yeah,
and, I'm sure I told some long story about it.
I'm sure you did. So he only got some of the actual benefit in the last few patches, and yeah, and now he gets the full benefit. It should calculate off both the base damage and the AP scaling, and boom, this is pretty big.
Yep, and then we got a small buff to Xayah's W.
Yep.
Which is kind of nice because this is the one that pulls all the feathers back in. It has kind of a diminishing return after like 3 feathers, but anything is kind of something.
Sure. I mean, not only is it more damage per feather, but it's also the lower cooldown. This is her primary CC ability. So, like, being able to root enemies more often not only allows you to escape or catch people, but also allows you to assess the fight and kite better. This is, I think, even just 1 second at all ranks being taken off of this ability is huge.
Yeah, it's also like her burst ability and where like the only unpredictability in her kit kind of comes from.
That and the R, but yeah.
Well, you know she's going to do the R because it's like her only way of juking anything. But the damage from her W kind of surprises people pretty often, especially when you get the perfect angle on it. It can do a shocking amount of damage.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes I've been at the gray screen and been like, what? So I agree with that. I think that the cooldown on this ability is even more important than the damage. This is a big buff to Xayah.
Yep.
And then Zach.
Let's see. Secret attack speed. Cool. And then we got less healing in the early game.
I'm just looking at the numbers real quick. Yeah, this is a nerf at most, if not all levels.
Honestly, Zach has a ton of like built-in healing.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't really the worst thing in the world. His healing has probably been secretly fairly strong for a very long time.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean he's a champion that I don't see much, but I'm always kind of happy to get him on my team. If you play him well, he can be an absolute terror with that unending despair item.
Oh, I love that item.
Yeah.
I build that like almost every game now. It's so much fun.
He can survive so long, and he can stick so close to enemies. And I'm not sure, but I think it might even go off while he's in his respawning form.
Can't confirm that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Ooh. So, yeah, just this is maybe the slightest nerf to his durability, but he can still do everything that he wants to do well.
Alright, next up we've got a couple item changes. First up, we can buy Hall Breaker and ARAM.
Oh, I bet you're excited about this!
It's different now, so you don't have to be by yourself to use it anymore. Now it's just kind of a win more move if it were to be an ARAM. But now it doesn't give you a ton of armor or MR anymore, so now it's kind of just a garbage item. It was abusive because of the, like, in a season or two when there were mythics, it was a mythic item disguised as a legendary item. With how many stats it gave.
Like, you know, the entire balance of ARAM, right, is that you're going to die at some point, you're going to have moments on the enemy's turret, even if you're behind. And so, just being able to get more time, and therefore take down a turret that you wouldn't otherwise be able to take down, is hugely important in ARAM, and I feel like every team should have one person build this now.
I don't think it's
Probably
going to catch on.
It probably won't because everybody wants to just build like tons of damage. But I bet you, in any type of actual like competitive ARAM setting, like they're gonna do an ARAM clash this month, or they just did one. I think they just did one, right? I feel like in any like actually like anybody taking ARAM seriously, they're gonna build this because this is more valuable than any stat item you could have. You're gonna die in ARAM no matter how fed you are, no matter how good your items are. Only one person on the team is gonna need to buy it. But one person should buy it, and as long as they're there, it's basically like getting an extra 50 or 60% of extra time with the turret.
Okay. And now with one of these kooky new items, we've got
I think
less.
Opportunity's a cool item.
We've got less lethality.
Less lethality for ranged users only.
Bummer.
I don't know of too many chems that were using this besides like Draven, and in terms of like ranged. In terms of besides Draven and I don't know. I think I've seen Corki use this.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I look at this icon on this item and I'm like, it just doesn't trigger memories in my mind. And when it comes to like really nerdy, goofy shit like League of Legends, I have a really good memory, and I just can't remember people buying this in the last few months.
Yeah, I don't know that I see it too much either. I think I've seen it on Draven. I think I've seen it on Corki. I don't usually like they go for like Duskblade, Youmu's, a couple of other things if they're like traditional assassins. Yeah, I don't see this too often either. It looks almost like a weird like QSS that's glowing purple.
Hmm.
And this is the great analysis you come for on.
Yeah. Let's just talk about the icons instead of.
Exactly. No, being able to, as a melee user, where you're still getting the full lethality for preparing, like being able to get out after you do your job a little bit quicker is nice.
Yep, I suppose so. All right.
You probably won't move the needle that much. Yeah, let's get to the runes.
The ruins, okay. Now we can see how much health we make off of Absorb Life, but I'm guessing it's not going to be a lot more than Fleet Footwork. And then infinitely more interesting is this change to Dark Harvest. And I'm kind of disappointed because at one point on the PBE, this was an even more juicier buff that this was receiving to bring it back into like the realm of relevance.
Yeah, relevance.
Yes.
Yeah, you told me about this right after we finished the last patch notes, and I was getting really excited. But looking at this, it's pretty power neutral.
No, I still think it's going to be better, but I think they losing like 60 base damage, which means you're gonna have to get like 6 or 7 stacks just to catch up to what you were getting by like sitting on your ass.
You're only getting 4 more damage per stack. So at 15 stacks at max level, you'd break even, and I think a good Dark Harvest user will probably get more than 15 in a game, but not by that much.
What I would have liked to have seen is if the cooldown just got drastically lower towards the end of the game, like if it went down to like 20 or 15 seconds. I think if they like had the power, if they had like the power fantasy of this thing stacking harder, like the later into the game you went, I think it'd be more interesting.
I think it would be cool if you could, and I'm not 100% sure it doesn't work this way, but I think it does. I think it would be cool if you could, like, proc this on multiple targets at one time.
It does not work that way.
Right. I feel like that would be what it would need to make it really cool. Give each target its own, like, 20 or 30 second cooldown, or even 60-second cooldown, but again, make it per target, or make it so that if you proc it against one target, you have another like 2 or 3 seconds to proc it on the next target before it goes on cooldown. Either one of those, I think, would have been a spicier, more fun, and probably more meaningful change than basically just changing the power curve a little bit so that you do worse if you can't get the stacks and better if you can.
Yep. Not as ambitious as I would have liked, but it's not really a keystone I care about that much anyway.
It can be fun to use on some champs, but yeah, usually I go into the sorcery line rather than the domination line.
Then we got an equally exciting change to electrocute here. We've got a flat 20-second at all levels instead of it being slightly less in the early game, and now it's stronger by a pretty meaningful amount in the early game, and then is just weaker in the late game. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I'm sure the level 2 Talons are going to be really happy with this.
Yeah, cheese-a-rooney, that's for sure.
Yeah, lower cooldown plus higher early damage means this is going to be a really oppressive lane tool. Either to just deal enough damage with a combo to knock your opponent out of lane, or to just straight up kill them.
Even Money says in the next 3 days there's going to be some guide on YouTube that's like, so you just get in their face at level 1, so you trigger it one time, and then you wait. You have to time your level 2 cheese for when the electrical cooldown is off again.
Oh yeah, like a
Usually you just run up to them at level 1 like every top laner does, basically, because they're crazy.
Yeah, you got like Kennen just hiding in the bush, waiting for you at level 1.
Everyone does that top.
Oh my god, yeah.
They just want to like auto attack check you. Every champion top does that nowadays. It's like so annoying.
And 30 damage late game, not a huge deal. I think this is definitely a buff overall for Electrocute. And in the same breath, probably a buff overall for Dark Harvest as well. Although not as big as the Electrocute one, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, there is kind of a funny change to this reroll for the ARAMs, but we don't really need to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean it's a smart change, right? Because as soon as when you re-roll, you're not sure whether you're going to
I don't like it.
Going to like the champ more or not.
I like the accountability of risking the re-roll and knowing someone was going to snatch your shit.
Accountability? That's just like your team trolling you, man.
Nah, man, you chose to risk giving up what you have for something you like more, and you have to pay the piper, man.
Oh, please. Okay, ARAM as a strategic risk and reward
Dark
game.
Souls,
Give me a fucking break.
Dark Souls drafting, man.
Dark Souls ARAM.
Dark Souls drafting. You gotta own it, man. That's what you get when you reroll. You could lose it, man.
No, I think it's a smart change.
Yeah, I don't really care. It's just funny.
It is.
Alright, this already took about an hour and 2 minutes longer than I thought this crazy short patch was going to take somehow. I don't even know how this took so long.
Well, you did talk for 20 minutes about Graves.
Really? I guess so.
Yeah.
Can't help myself. Just lucky Shen wasn't in this patch.
I am. Otherwise, we would have been up for another 3-hour 21 marathon. I think there might be actual people running marathons in a shorter time than it takes us to do some of the longer patches.
Most assuredly, because I run 3 5Ks during like the winter here with a couple people, and it definitely don't take you an hour and 3 minutes to run 5 kilometers.
It's an interesting definition of a marathon when marathons are 26.2 miles.
I was just referring to a 5K, which is kind of a standard.
You were just looking for a chance to show off your extreme athleticism.
I wouldn't go that far, but I did win first place when I was 29. Now I'm the youngest in my, or oldest in my age. Wait a minute.
Oldest.
There was a period where I was the youngest in my age group, and then I suddenly became the oldest in my age group, so now it's harder.
Well, you know, when you're the oldest in your age group, you know, at some point you're going to move on to the next age group, and then you're the youngest again.
Oh, that's okay. That's what I couldn't do it when I was in my 20s because there was all these 20 and 21-year-olds. But then as soon as I
Hmm.
turned 30, everyone in my age group was obviously like, in their mid to late 30s. So that's when I was able to win first place one time.
Who were the 21-year-olds who were beating you? Were they just like thin, office workers who like to work out? Were they gym bros?
I don't know. We just show up at like this campus and there's like 600 kids there, and they all range from like people showing up with their children to like old cancer survivors in their wheelchairs trying to do it.
Oh, nice.
So.
It'll be a good time. When I get healthier, I should run one of those.
Try to do 2 or 3 of them every winter when it's not hell on earth here like it is right now where it's 104 outside.
I'm working up for a to try and do a hike lately. So I've been just gradually increasing the slope of my treadmill more and more. I'm at 6 degrees now.
Damn, that is some serious gamification right there. Increase that slope, man.
Figure once I get to 7 or 8, then I just got to get more used to the outdoors, and I'll be ready to hike along mountains.
Alright, let's not turn this into National fucking Geographic over here. That'll do it for patch 14.13. See you guys next time. Hopefully we can have some extra homies to talk about some changes.
And in the
We'll see.
meantime, enjoy inting on Varus.
Exactly.